What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Troll Bro Dude. And before we get into anything else, and I know we are very excited for this episode, I want to talk about Underdog Fantasy, our partner. We're actually running our first contest with Underdog. I am announcing it right now for the first time. So basically, what we're doing for this slop season is we are going to have a number of NBA players in a Google form that you can guess where they are going to get traded to this slop season. So it has all the usual names, the Miles Turner, the John Collins, the Jay Crowder, the guys that have been on the trade block for a while. And then we just picked a bunch of other names. And if you go on there and you guess and you get it right, you can win up to $500 of Underdog bonus cash. So link is in the description. First place gets $500 in Underdog bonus cash. Second place gets $250 in bonus cash. And third place gets $50. So we will be running this all the way up through the week before the trade deadline. So you're going to need to sign up for Underdog, use our promo code SLOP, get a $100 deposit match, and then put your username and email in the form as well. And you can win up to $500 on Underdog. So we're very excited for that. Once again, link is in the description on the podcast on YouTube. Check that out if you have not already. So let's get into the slop, baby. We got some. We don't have any real slop to dig up today. So we have something possibly even better, which is Bill Simmons trade
definitely
value
more
list.
perverted. Yeah, I was gonna say definitely a more insane thing to get excited about. But Trill and I we're texting. Like I had a text from Trill when it dropped at what was it, like 11 at night, and I'm texting him back
midnight.
I'm texting him back at 5:30 in the morning. I'm listening to this right now.
I'm cramming it now. Yeah. It is going into my brain.
We're talking about right now.
I tweeted this morning and said I have to stay off of Twitter because people were spoiling it. I was getting DMs. I was getting people tweeting at me. And then someone tweeted at me who I don't even know. And they just said, you have to be another level of sicko to be Twitter so you didn't get Bill Simmons trade value list spoiled for you.
This is
what we live for.
It's exactly as sane as being a fan of Marvel, like the Marvel's universe. It's exactly the same.
It's way worse.
No, I was gonna say I know you guys know a lot about like Ant-Man. I know a lot about like Rosillo. They both got in trouble for being naked somewhere they weren't supposed to. We can cut that if we need to.
No, it's staying in the pod.
Okay.
Staying in the pod.
Yeah.
We love Rosillo and respect him.
But by the way, we're talking about the trade value thing. I don't think we actually ever said it, did we?
Yeah, we did. I did. I said the trade value list drops. People see the title of the episode too.
Okay, that's
true. They know what we're talking about. Okay. And let's just get right into it. We obviously covered Bill's trade value list the last time around, and we had some issues with it. If you didn't see the first episode, go check that out as well. But this one is along the same general lines. He did tiers for everything. He ranked players based on, where their standing is in the league right now. He only did his other one like 6 months ago. And I think our biggest problem with the last one, I don't know if it shows up as much here, but our big problem last time was this idea of expected value from young players, guys that were rookies or second year guys versus guys who were squarely in the middle of their prime or maybe even a little bit past their prime, but like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and guys who were just like the most proven NBA players imaginable and can function on virtually any team. So that was our main issue with it last time. Now, this time around, he talked about how deep the league is and how there's so much more talent that it is hard to because when he used to do the trade value list, it was like 40 or 50, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's true. Yeah. And now he has like 70 people plus, he has 70 people plus 10, 15 honorable mentions. Like it is hard to really narrow down a list for this kind of thing.
Right. No, and I've tried to do this type of thing before, and it is, it is hard. Like we've said, it's impossible to draw the line. Like trying to figure out what Shaedon Sharp's value is like an exercise in effervescence. It doesn't. It'll change game to game almost.
Exactly.
So it's a valuable exercise to at least try to figure out. But like, in general, I think that some of this, my biggest problem with Bill's trade value column has always been that he is married to this, I think, quite frankly, very stupid idea of like making these gimmicky little tiers that I think kind of defeats the purpose of a trade value column, because guys aren't going to clump up into nice, neat little, I don't know, buckets of similar circumstances. And I feel like Bill kind of pulls guys either up or down to fit into his little tiers.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a few examples of that in here.
Yes. Like I don't think, like, I think a lot of times when he's getting things wrong, it's this issue. It's more about this than it is Bill actually being a bad analyst. Because I think, honestly, for the most part, I thought this was, for the most part, was relatively good. There were like a couple of really eyebrow raising things, but I thought I thought he did a much better job with this one than he did with the one in the off season.
Which is funny because you would think it's the opposite, because after the season, you've had a little bit of time to sit, not really be super reactionary to what you've seen. Whereas in the middle of the season, we're all guilty of week to week kind of having opinions on guys and teams that change throughout they ebb and flow throughout the season due to the fact that they, 1 week a team looks amazing and then the next week the team might look like shit. And I feel as though he actually did do like you said, I think he did a better job as well. There were a few that really stood out that we'll get to, but let's talk about the toughest omissions, which were basically a handful of young guys, role players, and veterans who maybe are on the end of their career or have injuries or whatever. So
also at the twisting of Joe House, adding Julius Randle, which I thought was very funny.
He's one guy I wanted to talk about on here because so let's just run down the toughest omissions, which were Alex Caruso, Wendell Carter Jr., Kristaps Porzingis, Seth Curry, Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort, Jonathan Kuminga, Jeremy Sohan, RJ Barrett, in parentheses, barely deserves it, as they said.
Yeah.
Julius Randle, and as House argued, we'll talk about that in a little bit, Bones Highland, Fred VanVleet, Robert Williams, Jalen Suggs, Jared Vanderbilt, Dyson Daniels, Draymond Green, which I want to get to, Keldon Johnson, Jordan Poole, Jalen Williams, Andrew Nembhard, which I brought up recently on a podcast that he said he was going to include him in this tough omissions section, Devin Vassell, Ivica Zubac, and Malik Monk. So
also Keegan Murray. We missed Keegan Murray.
Oh, Keegan Murray as well.
Yeah.
Keegan Murray. I believe they added him later when they were.
Yes, they did. Yes.
So, okay. So let's dive into the Julius Randle conversation, because I think there are two ways that you could go about this, right? You could go on one hand and you could say Julius Randle's having a bounce back season. He's been really good. He's kind of been helping the Knicks win recently. He's been cutting down on some of the issues that he's been having. But on the other hand, my whole thing with this is, if Julius Randle had any trade value, would he be on the Knicks?
So that's the thing. Like, I think Julius Randle, I think if we were doing a best player,
yes,
this would be an appropriate thing for Julius Randle, who I think and I mean, look, I think what Julius Randle has done is he's played himself back into his contract being neutral. You know what I'm saying? So, like, maybe we do see him as part of a trade now, because now he's not toxic. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you have to attach things to get rid of Julius Randle. Like, I would take a flyer on him if I were. But that's the problem, though. Now that I'm thinking about it. That's the issue
with Julius Randle, is that you would take a flyer on him if you're because he's going to make you too good. If you, for example, if the Charlotte Hornets were like, well, we'll take Julius Randle for some expiring contracts for Kelly Oubre and Mason Plumlee or whatever, that works in my head. Okay. Well, he might actually make them too competent. Like, he might actually help them win games in the interim, because he's not, as you said, if you're ranking the top 100 players, Julius Randle at least has some value as a floor raiser. His teams aren't losing 60 games. They're winning
No.
in that 30 range, which
Right.
can hurt a lot of teams due to the fact that they're probably going to want to tank for the rest of the season. And my biggest thing with Julius Randle, my biggest thing has always been with Julius Randle. The hardest part about finding a single trade for Julius Randle is that he is so unlike a lot of other players in that I actually think that he's pretty good when he's playing the way that he has this year, at least to start the year. But he kind of presents the unique opportunity. It's almost like Russell Westbrook a little bit, where like he takes away from the development of the young guys that you have on your team as well, potentially getting those on-ball reps, learning to function within an offense, because he's a huge ball stopper, and he's a guy who's going to require a ton of touches if he's in your starting lineup. So I guess that's my thing is like, I don't even know if he deserves the honorable mention, because I think that if it's hard to find a trade for him without giving up value, without giving up another pick to get off the contract. And then also because the fact, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he's not like a solid, good player. Like it has everything to do with the fact that he doesn't fit on a ton of teams. He hurts guys' development, and he still makes you pretty decent, like a 30-win team when you might be trying to go for Wemby and win 20 games or whatever.
Well, and I honestly don't even like even putting aside the if you think he's gonna like help you like win games and that might make you too good. I think it's more just about like there's just not really teams that like need that. But there's only 30 teams and the league is so deep. Like every team has guys they're trying to develop at that position or like it's literally just the Hornets. Like I like ran through every other one in my head. No other team could like use like maybe the Heat are the only other team in the league.
I still don't even think I don't think they would have a use for him.
Yeah, and so it's more. I almost think it's like more just about that, just about like literal value. He is a good player like on the surface, but it's just like teams just don't need him. I guess would be the thing that I think makes him tricky.
I guess my question is if Julius Randle's being included on here with his contract, which extends, correct me if I'm wrong, he has this year, next year, and I think he has
I think 3
years. Okay.
3 years. Yeah.
So my question for you is if there were a team that were willing to take on a contract, and it's not a great contract, maybe it is neutral value. Maybe it's like, Julius Randle's worth $25 million a year or whatever on your team.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think I'd just take Tobias Harris. Like, I think that at least like Tobias makes way more money and it's harder to make work short term. But like Tobias has proven that he is way more role malleable than Julius. Like he's been pretty good since James Harden got to the Sixers. And if he's being included on here and Tobias isn't because he makes too much money, like I think that Tobias would help a lot more teams than Julius Randle would.
He's also role malleable in more valuable. 3-4 is one of the more valuable positions in the NBA versus 4-5, which is what Randle is, which is one of the least valuable. So like, everybody's a 4-5. So yeah, I honestly I would agree with that too. Like and I honestly think Julius Randle's like fine, and like good.
Yeah.
Like and
he's solid.
This is kind of, I think I said this before the year that I thought Julius Randle's probably going to bounce back to somewhere in between. He's not as bad. He's not as bad as he was last year. He's not as good as he was 2 years ago. So I think this is, he's coming back to his level here.
Exactly. So, okay. So there were a few other ones that really stood out to me on here. We've already had the RJ Barrett conversation a ton of times. We're not RJ Barrett guys.
No.
You could make the argument. I think he was fine on the trade value list in the summer before he got the extension. Yeah. Now we got the extension. We're in year 4 and we're seeing a lot of the same issues that RJ had before. I don't think his career is totally, lost or anything. I think he might end up being a decent second contract guy if he can kind of work on some parts of his game. But right now I would say he has no trade value. Like you can't trade him for the rest of the year. And then because of the poison pill, because basically it's impossible to make those kind of deals work in the first place. And then after the season, I don't think a ton of teams are going to be lining up to take on that RJ Barrett contract until he proves that he is that kind of player. So I wouldn't have included him in this section even at all either. The next one. All right. So we're going to get to 2 that I think that are One is near and dear to your heart, and the other one is just a beef that I have. So the one guy that was included in here that I found interesting was someone that Bill had much higher on his list in the summer, which was Fred VanVleet. And I believe because, he was coming off the All-Star game. I think he had him in like the 40s or 50s. You even argued, you were like, I mean, he made the All-Star game. He might even should be higher. He's on a good contract.
Yeah.
He is technically expiring right now. That is the issue, is player option after the year. Right. I think that the Raptors aren't going to trade him because they generally don't trade their guys. But if you were to put Fred VanVleet's expiring contract on the market right now, I wonder what you could get for him is my question.
I think people would get him. I don't know. I think Fred VanVleet's still a really good player. I think he's taking a lot of shit for the sins of Masai Ujiri, like right now. Like, because this is not... I mean, I know he's not having a good season, but like, you can't point at Scotty Barnes and say, hey, we thought he was going to be better. That's a no-go. You can't point out that they have like 6 guys who can go.
Yeah.
And you definitely can't point out that 2 of your guys are playing at their absolute maximum you can expect of them, and you're still having a bad season. So I just think Fred gets the shit in that case, because that's like that's your only option is to hey, he's having a bad season. That's God, we would be a 3 seed if just Fred wasn't
just woke up, got his head out of his ass.
Yeah, Fred just did this.
I'll say this much about Fred. I think that he has shown in the past that he can obviously be a part of a championship team. Like, he was an incredibly important championship. He was a bench player, but he played real minutes in the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, and was a huge part. Hit tough shots.
Wait, I just thought of something. But sorry, you finish your thought. But
no, you go.
Listen to this trade: Fred VanVleet for Christian Wood.
What are the Mavs including? First round picks?
It's an expiring.
I still would rather have Fred VanVleet. Like I actually am not I'm not the Russillo Simmons I just hate Christian Wood. I think he's very talented. I think that if you were a big and you have defensive issues, I pretty much want to steer clear from you at all costs.
Is there a team more built for Christian Wood than this Raptors team, though?
Well, my thing with the Raptors is, as you've talked about it before, they just need a guy they need a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They need a Donovan Mitchell. They need an engine that you can pop in there before it makes it work.
The cheap one is Christian Wood. I'm kind of it's not a real one, you know what I'm saying? No. But you're getting a guy who can create a shot, and Christian Wood, if you tell him, hey, when we're on half-court offense, go cook, he would love that. He would have such a good time. And honestly, he would probably drag their offense from their half-court offense from 30th to, 20th? I think something like that.
Maybe. I think that Christian Wood in the situation that he's in now is probably going to be a little bit better than what he would do for a team like the Raptors. I think the Raptors, if anything, just need I don't buy into they need a point guard, but they need a creator. When Fred is the secondary guy, for example, when Pascal has his little stretches where he looks like Giannis, then Fred's a totally fine complementary player to have around him. He does the things. The thing that you would be concerned with Fred is obviously the size and the finishing. The finishing is terrible. He's one of the worst finishers in the NBA. He's never going to be good at that. But he has improved as a passer, so you can put him on a lot of teams as a connective passer. He can run a little bit of offense because his shooting is real. He can shoot off movement. He can shoot off the dribble. He can dribble, pass, shoot, and defend, which I think works on a lot of teams. So I'm not sure I would include him on the list, especially because he's expiring. But I do think it's funny that his value has dropped 10, 15, 20 spots on Bill's list because of this bad stretch. Whereas, and I know that Raptors fans are worried about him, but as you said, I don't think that this environment is built for any guard with his skill set to thrive.
No, I mean, like, credit to Pascal. He's doing what he needs to do, but I mean, just this team has no scoring, absolutely, like, whatsoever. Fred needs to go get with someone. Fred with Luka would be like, I'm
Incredible.
just saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think
Bob Bulgaris would be.
I was being a little tongue in cheek with the Christian
That would be a very
thing,
good fit, though.
But I do think, like, I do think the Mavericks would, like, be a fit for a team, and I think they would give you real stuff. I think they would consider giving you a first round pick because they realize they, like, messed this up. So, something like that. I mean, hey, like, the Warriors might do it. Who knows? Like, like, the Warriors might send you, maybe not Kuminga at this point, but, like, Moody and another first and, whatever salary.
Sure.
So,
and I do know that they've floated Fred VanVleet out there in trades before, even though they generally don't trade their guys. Like, they floated him for Ben Simmons 100%. Like, I know that is a thing that happened, but they also viewed Ben as an upgrade because Ben fits what they want to do with their team. So, all right. So, man, that would have been really disgusting if that ever. Could you imagine Ben Simmons? Like, remove Fred VanVleet from that team and put Ben Simmons on that team.
They would have, like, a 63 offensive rating.
It would be horrible.
Oh my God.
It would be the most disgusting.
That would the game, like, the people would be committing seppuku at the game. People who don't even know what that is, like Albertan, truck drivers who would just be possessed by the spirit of honor and just be like, I can't watch this, and kill themselves.
After every Raptors game, it would just be that tweet from the Saudi Arabian government that was like
the CN Tower weeping. It would be a Ben Garrison cartoon of the CN Tower weeping every
know your place.
Oh God. Ben anywhere is very funny, I gotta say.
Oh man. He honestly he's so lucky he ended up with Kevin Durant. Okay. So Time Lord is the next guy that's on this list. That I know you were the number one Time Lord guy. So what did you think about his omission from the list?
I honestly think it's fine, to be honest, because I mean, this is the thing with Rob. It's like Rob's trade value could be under no circumstances will we take this guy for some teams, and other teams, might be willing to give us, like, a real blue chip prospect for him. It really would depend. It's all over the place. I personally think Rob is going to be fine, and I think he's going to be dynamite when he plays again, which might be soon. But all that said, I it's tough for me to get very mad at someone who, wants to leave him off lists like this because of the injury concern, because it's a real thing, he's missed a lot of games. He's missed a lot of games. I personally don't think so, but I don't think it's insane. Like, I think it's totally reasonable.
And I think Bill's a green teamer too, deep down. So
for the wrong reasons, though. He's an anti-smart green teamer. Just a perverted, disgusting. That is like heresy of the highest order. Just a gross thing. A green teamer who, like, thinks the Jays weren't mature enough was the problem. That's why they lost to the Nets.
They walk around like they've won something before. They've never won shit.
Shut the fuck up. You're 60. You're 60 years old. Talking about White Lotus. These guys are 24. God damn, dude. Anyway.
So there were a few other guys I thought that were interesting on this part. So a few guys that fell out of the list that were interesting to me were, like, Jordan Poole, which I think is understandable based on kind of everything we've talked about.
I've never been a Jordan Poole guy.
You've never been a Jordan Poole guy. I've been a little bit higher on Jordan Poole, and I think that he's, I think him being on the fringes of this conversation is fair for now, especially because he got the extension. I'm okay with that. The guy that I think that is insane that fell out,
I think we're going to agree on.
It's
one guy. Yeah.
It's Draymond Green.
Well, why? That's insane to me. I get, why does he not get more credit? It is crazy. Is it because of all the
No.
Stuff.
It is clinically insane that Draymond Green doesn't get more credit for the Warriors' success.
Yes, like it's. I'm sorry. Like it's gonna sound like I'm being salty. I get that Steph is an all-time great. Like dropping my kayfabe, dropping my bit. Like Steph is obviously the engine that has made everything. He's hugely important to the Warriors' success. Steph is 66% of the Warriors. But Draymond is like 25. Like there is a huge amount. I'm sorry, it's way more than Clay. It's always been way more than Clay.
But public perception would let you believe that Clay is the second best player from the Warriors years. I saw people tweeting the other day when they said, what was it? There was a tweet that said, what was a bigger win for the Warriors, which was Clay at 11 or Draymond in the second round. And I'm like,
insane.
I'm like, hold on. So first off, let's put the context on this. Yeah. Obviously, Draymond is way more important to the Warriors dynasty than Clay is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the 2011 draft is way more stacked than the 2012 draft.
Yep.
Draymond's the second best player from the 2012 draft, and there were like 3 or 4 guys that ever made all-star teams in that draft. There were like 8 in the 2011 draft. Yes. And in addition to that, you got literally the second best second round pick behind Jokic of all time in the 2012 draft. It is psychotic to think anyone but Draymond Green is.
They started winning games because Draymond started playing good. I'm sorry that there's a direct line. Because I mean,
David Lee goes, Draymond's in, and they're cooking, dude.
Yes. Well, I'm even just talking about this season. Steph was good. Like when they have bounced back and righted the ship to 500, that is almost a direct correlation to Draymond Green being good and going back to being as good as Draymond. I don't know. Insane. Seems disrespectful. Seems like I mean, I get that he punched a guy in the face, but it also seems like
that's the part we forgot about.
Yeah, right. I get he punched a guy in the face, and like I guess if you want to blame Jordan Poole being bad on him, fine. I don't think so. I just don't think Jordan Poole was ever extremely good to begin with. He's just been fine. But I don't know. I think if
Draymond was put on the market tomorrow, there would be 5 to 10 teams that line up and give real value for him. And I think it's because he was the second best player on a championship team, not literally 7 months ago, like 6 months ago. Like you could argue Wiggins, but Draymond is more important to the Warriors than Wiggins ever has been.
Yeah, if the Celtics were in like a less stable place, like they don't need to rock the boat. But I guarantee you, they would have a meeting about like Rob Williams and Brogdon.
Most smart teams would.
Yeah. That's what
that's what I'm saying. Is like unless you are running away with shit, like unless you're like so solid and content with the team, every team would be lining up for Draymond. I'm telling you, there would be a lot of really, really good teams lining up for Draymond. So, okay, and then let's get to the last 2 guys on the honorable mentions that were. Most of them were just fine. Like most of them, I didn't really have a problem with. But the 2 guys that I felt like in opposite directions, Andrew Nembhard. Let's wait more than him playing a quarter of a season at 20. He's a year older than Maxey, I believe. I think he's 23 years old, or he's 22 going on 23. Like, he's a good player. And, like, look, he could have a good career. But, like, another thing that I think that they really overthought with this is the fact that, like, Andrew Nembhard was drafted in the second round. And second-round contracts, actually, from a team perspective, aren't quite as team-friendly, quote-unquote. So Andrew Nembhard, for example, has a 4-year contract, which actually they paid him a little bit more because they had cap space. But he has a 4-year contract with a team option on the last year. All of it is just above the vet minimum, but then he becomes an unrestricted free agent after that. So a lot of the times with these guys that get drafted in the second round, that really it goes under discussed, is the fact that a lot of the guys that overperform their draft slot, those guys are way more likely to end up on other teams than the guys that you hit in the first round, because you can't have their restricted rights. So, like, if they get to free agency, you can go.
Oh no, I was just going to wait you if they go to free agency, and then I was just going to say I was just going to list off guys like this:
Jalen Brunson, yeah,
Malcolm Brogdon,
yes.
These are guys also drafted at the top of the first round. I was just waiting for you to finish to reinforce your point with what I had.
But this happens a lot, where like when
Right.
you outperform your draft slot as a second round pick, you're only under team control for those first 3 to 4 years, depending on how you kind of built out your contract with the team. Right. And if that is the case, guys that get drafted in the first round, they're under team control for like 8 to 10 years, depending on, kind of how their first contract goes. So that to me is ultimately way more valuable from a team perspective if I'm trading for a guy or if I have a guy than from these second round picks that hit. And like Andrew Nembhard's a great story. And like, I think he's going to be a solid NBA player, but like, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Yeah. And then the last guy that was included, and I think should have been on the list, Draymond is the one that I'm like, I'm crazy. The second one, Devin Vassell is going to be really, really good. Like,
I agree. Yeah, that was.
I've watched some games of him. He's good, and like, he's 22. He honestly, like, I was watching the game the other night, and I was like, he's kind of got like a little Chris Middleton to his game. He's just got like a little like. He can shoot over guys. He's like a little. He's a bit more elusive than Middleton. Really good shooter. He's going to be like a 20 to 25 per game scorer on good efficiency. And I think that I've heard he's a good defender. I haven't really watched the Spurs enough to say enough, and his analytics aren't good, so I can't really say that I've watched a ton. But I think that he should be on the list, if anything. Like, it's crazy to me that he was left off.
Yeah. Like JJ says in the comments, and he's right about this, that if 3 years, if you don't use that team option on the final year, it is you can get RF restricted free agent rights. It still does subtract a year though, and a lot of times teams that are using these guys sometimes they just opt to take the year of cheap use.
Like the Mavericks,
like the Mavericks. Yes, and that's exactly because you have to pay the guy a year early. So it technically costs you more money. Which, boy,
it's still a year shorter, and also on top of that, like, I mean, it's pretty rare that a second, like, Jokic is the only one I can think of that got a 5-year max from the second round pick, because like you're gonna take that 4-year contract and then kind of go from there. Like that's generally speaking how this works. There are exceptions for sure, but I just think that like when we're talking about like we're ranking guys that are pretty close, you have to take all of these things into consideration. Yes. So yeah, and as Will pointed out, that's how briefly Melton was the highest paid guy from the 2018 draft, because after after 2 years, they turned down the team option. They extended him for the contract that he's on now, which is a steal, but also he got that extension earlier than everyone else from the 2018 draft. Right. So, but once again, from a team perspective, you'd obviously rather be paying a guy $2 million than $10 million in those last few years.
I mean, it costs you more money. It costs you more money. So obviously, what's the point of winning if it costs you money?
Exactly. Stupid. Yeah. You might as well just fucking dissolve your franchise if you have to spend real American dollars.
I'm Mark Cuban, and welcome to Shark Tank. And then instead, it's just the jackass banjo plays.
And then it's just a montage of Jalen Brunson in a Knicks jersey. And
hey, I'm Mark Cuban, and this is letting your second best player go into unrestricted free agency. Oh! Wee Man comes over and kicks him in the nuts while he's rolling on the ground.
All right, let's get into the list because we've spent enough time on the honorable mentions here.
Yeah.
The first tier, which I named, I don't know if he had a name for it, but I named it Injury, Contract, and Age Concerns, which is Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, and Zach LaVine.
So right off the bat, 4 guys who should not be anywhere near each other on a trade value list. I'm sorry, like with their contracts. maybe Brad Beal and Zach LaVine should be in the same like general area.
Because we're worried about them.
Yeah, you're concerned about them, and there's just not a lot of like high upside. Chris Paul, I mean, I know he looks bad right now, but like has been playing pretty well at a reasonable standard for a reasonable amount of time. Like
I'm pushing back on this one.
The contract is not that bad. The contract is not that bad.
Trade value, though, I don't think that he has any trade value. Like
I guess that's true, yeah.
like this is a trade value list. The contract isn't that bad. I agree. I think he's kind of cooked. Like I think that like all right. Let's talk about this year. He's averaging 10 points a game on 36% from the field, 4.7 rebounds and 8.8 assists. Like I would not have included Chris Paul on this list at all. And
I wouldn't have included any of these guys except for one. Is I guess is my point.
So Kawhi is the one you would include.
Yes, and he would be higher.
Yes.
Because like, well, maybe he wouldn't be higher, but like, I like at least with Kawhi Leonard, there's a gamble there. You know what I'm saying? Like the gamble
it's a
that
franchise changer.
Yes, exactly. Like there is still the guy who was the best player on 1 to 2 team championship teams, depending on how you feel about that one Spurs title, if it was him or Duncan. So I don't know. Like I think it's crazy to put Kawhi with these guys, especially considering that we've seen him on the court a little bit now and looks okay, honestly. Like
yeah. I'm fine bumping LaVine and I'm fine bumping LaVine, Paul, and Beal. I think if we're just talking about like, there are contexts that I can see Bradley Beal in being the second or third best player because he's trying again on defense. The 3-point shot is at least falling at a higher clip. His finishing is actually been really good. He's gotten better as a playmaker. He makes way too much money. He just does.
Yeah,
he makes way too much money for his skill set. But also, I think he probably should be included on the list because he still is one of the 30, 35 best players in the NBA. And just having one of those guys on your team changes your fortunes. Yeah. So the two guys I think I would remove is Chris Paul. I'm hesitant on Zach LaVine. I'm more worried about Zach LaVine's injury issues, but I wouldn't have a problem bumping him only because of the massive contract and the injury issues. But he's had games recently that make you believe that he's not completely done. Like he's going to be like a solid contributor at least.
I'm just saying like the range of outcomes for one of these guys is drastically different from like the other ones.
Agreed.
I mean, I guess Chris Paul's is like way smaller. As Sam says in the chat, he moved Kawhi and CP3 up 30 spots after convincing from House.
CP3 moved up 30 spots. Like, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Chris Paul, if he is nothing more than a 10-point per game scorer who shoots less than 40% from the field, and like, look, Chris Paul has the best feel of any player that you're ever going to play against, but like, I think that something really changed with him, dude. Like, the way that he has looked for about since the Maverick series has been different.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it is trade value, so like, I think it's fine to like drop him off the list. I just think the Kawhi thing raised my eyebrow. That was like one of like 4 times in this list that my eyebrow went up.
Yeah, I would put Kawhi higher just because of the upside. I think the upside is like changes your franchise. I think the upside is like you win a title. But I also think that like that version of Kawhi might be gone, but there's still a useful version of Kawhi because of everything that he brings to the table. Defensively, offensively, he's still a good shooter. Like he's become like a pretty good ball mover. Anytime I've watched the Clippers, like when he played the Celtics the other night, like he was a much more willing passer. Yeah, I think that there is a world where Kawhi is like still really good, and that is something that is worth holding on to when you're considering all this. All right, let's move to the second tier, which is quality starters on good contracts. We have CJ McCollum, Kyle Kuzma, Tyrese Maxey, Jeremy Grant, DeMar DeRozan, Jordan Clarkson, which I might even need to take a 5-minute moment of silence for the inclusion of Jordan Clarkson on here, and Tyler Hero. So You know where I'm going to go with this.
I mean, you know where I'm going to go with this. I don't. The putting Hero and Clarkson higher than like Maxey is crazy to me. I'm sorry. Like,
okay, all right. Let's put Tyler Hero aside because Tyler Hero is at least young. He already was extended, which is an issue in itself. But if you're talking about from a trade value, like you can't trade him this year, you have to trade him after the season because of the poison pill. Jordan Clarkson being on here. Do you know how old Jordan Clarkson is?
Let me see. That was. I'm gonna guess he is 29.
He is 30 years old. He will be turning 31 at the end of the year.
Oh wow! So
deep
30. Yeah.
So like he in July, I believe. So right after the season. So Jordan Clarkson, who has been in the NBA since 2014, I believe he was the 2014 draft.
Like that,
So he's been in the NBA for almost a decade. Has had one entire good season in his career, which is like a decent chunk of his Jazz career plus the beginning quarter of this season.
Mm-hmm.
Being included this even on the list in general is fucking like Draymond Green was left off and Devin Vassell were left off, but Jordan Clarkson is higher than Tyrese Maxey, who is almost 10 years younger than him, provides a very similar skill set, has proven to be a more capable off-ball player, and I think at least in theory has more defensive potential. Like Clarkson's never been a defender. This is the first year he's been able to balance the scoring and the playmaking. I think it's legitimately insane to have Jordan Clarkson on the list in general, and this high is fucking nuts to me.
Yeah, no, I mean that was the one. This was another eyebrow raising moment.
It's just reactionary. Yeah, it's just included because he's been good this year. And like I've actually said before, like I think I can see Jordan Clarkson being on some winning teams, like as a 6th, 7th man, like not as a guy who's
in a Jordan Poole role.
Yes,
he would be a Jordan Poole role. Like we've seen that guy. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Tyler Hero and Jordan Clarkson and Maxey all ended up in the same tier for reasons. Like, it's just these guys who kind of have similar roles in the NBA. But I don't know. I like Maxey a lot better than these other two guys.
Yep.
Tyler Hero does not have a good contract. Like, I'm sorry.
He's already sailed. Yeah, exactly. He was great when he was on a rookie deal. We'll see how he is on this second contract. Like, let's play the waiting game with that a little bit.
I'm not playing the waiting game. I'm out. I've been out for 5 years.
I'm out. You're keeping up with the shark. You're the Shark Tank theme for tonight.
Yes, exactly. I'm Shark Tank. I'm Mr. Wonderful. And that our audience despises me and wants me to have a heart attack on air.
And that the only reason they keep tuning in is because they want you to die.
Yeah, they want to be there when I die live on air. When my heart does the biological Bud Dwyer, as I call it.
And as Will points out in the comments, they kept talking about Kyle Kuzma's great contract.
I mean, it is for 1 year.
No, for 7 more months. He has a player option after the year.
Yeah.
They just looked at the average and they didn't look at whether they had a player option or whether if Kyle Kuzma went on the market today, he might get you like a solid prospect and a okay first round pick. But he's not getting you anything crazy in terms of trades.
Right. Yeah.
I actually like he probably will get traded sometime in the next few months, so we'll see what his value is. But I just don't think that his inclusion on here makes a ton of sense. He probably should have been in the honorable mentions just due to the fact that like he's a good player. He's become a very nice player, but like he probably should have been in the honorable mention section because of the fact that he's expiring.
I think whack first round pick, like either real late or something with protections that turn it into 2 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
Is probably what is going to happen there.
When he's expiring, like it just makes no sense. Yeah. Okay. So CJ McCollum, I think I might bump him. Like he just got extended.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like he's
he's 31. He just got extended for like $30 million a year. Like,
he's also in a really good situation. Like a really good situation.
I've defended CJ in the past because I've thought that the prior versions of CJ McCollum were useful players on good teams, and I still think he is. But like, if you're going to be reactionary and say certain guys shouldn't be included, like Fred VanVleet, CJ McCollum's been terrible this year. Like he's not shooting well. He's not been the same guy that we're used to. I don't know. I would not have included him on the list, or if I did, I would have had him maybe in that last tier, just from a true trade value perspective. And to put it in perspective for everyone that's in this tier, like there are certain guys on here like Maxey on his rookie contract. He has one of the best contracts in the NBA still, and Jeremy Grant, who I know he's expiring as well, but the way that he's played this year, if we want to overreact to the way that guys have played, Jeremy Grant, DeMar, and Maxey are they clear everyone else in this tier. Like from a trade value perspective, like they can actually change your franchise in a way, like if they're on your team. And I don't think that any of these guys can. So, all right, let's get to the next group, which is Jalen Brunson, Lauri Markkanen, De'Aaron Fox, DeAndre Ayton, Jared Allen, Domantas Sabonis, Rudy Gobert, and Andrew Wiggins. I know what you want to talk about. By the way, I just got to say here, this is the end of the Patreon part, by the way. This is the end. If you want to hear the whole episode, if you want to listen, view, whatever, you gotta pay up. You gotta subscribe to the Patreon.
This is capitalist. This is the communism leaving our bodies.
That's right.
Capitalism coming in.
Tap in. Pay us slot bucks.
Oh my God. I